Good morning. We are taking this time this morning. Recently, as I've been teaching the class, I've been talking about trials and tribulations, and I can't think of any testimony that's greater than this. Is the interviewing Bradley DeGroat, who was in a horrific car accident, and I have known the DeGroats since a graduation service I did at their church while I was in Bible school. It's since about 1989. I don't know if Bradley was even born then.
I was two.
You were two.
Yeah.
It's funny how things come all the way around, but I have been in and out of their church to about, I think, 2010 or 11. Almost 20 years I spent going up there off and on, a couple of tent meetings. Many of you know Tony, who came down here and was part of the class. That is Bradley's uncle, Cindy's brother.
Baby brother.
Baby brother. And I'll start by, because Tony isn't here, but there were two comments when this, as we will get into. We're going to look at kind of a little bit about Bradley before the accident. And then during the accident, we're going to talk to the rest of the family about how they felt and where was the Lord in all this. And then we're going to let Bradley share a little bit about coming out of his coma, and which it's pretty unheard of. So anyway, so this is Chuck and Cindy have been in ministry. Spencerport Assembly of God, which is next to Rochester, New York. They pastored that church for 28 years. They recently moved down here. How long ago?
4.5 months.
4.5 months. They came down during recruiting month. I think it was February. And they came,
Beautiful.
And they landed here about 1:45 in the morning. It was 60-some degrees, and I don't think they had too much convincing to do about coming down here.
Beautiful.
80
In the midst of February.
80 in the midst of February, so they ran into recruitment time down here, and then that's a whole nother testimony of how God just lined everything up. So so we're going to just kind of dialogue. We're going to freewheel a little and trust the Lord in this. But two things that Tony said to me about Bradley is, one, before the accident, that if they knew what he was doing, they would have had a heart attack. And then the second thing he said to me was God had to almost kill him to bring him to life. So it was kind of interesting to see that out of almost death came this incredible life story. And so we're going to share a little of that. I think I wanted to start a little, Bradley. I want you to just kind of give me your mindset. What was going on in your life a little bit before the accident, being at home? I can even remember sitting in a room and we were all talking about the Lord, and I can still remember this. You came behind the desk, and you sat there and you looked at the computer, and you had this real defiant look on your face that said, I'm not going to listen to any of this, and so we ignored you. But go ahead, just share a little about what was going on in your life before that.
Well, before the accident and everything, I was basically being raised in a church, and having my parents as ministers and everything. So, the preacher's kid or whatever, going to all the church services, going to all the special meetings because you're the pastor's son and all this stuff. Like, growing up in that, you can't, it wasn't for me. Like, it was cool. I would go. I had friends and everything, but I don't know. It didn't click. It didn't click with me. So
You didn't know it was for you.
right. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I think people have to know, if I'm not correct, isn't there 7 generations of pastors in your family?
Yeah, and the kids going into ministry are the 8th generation. As
The
well.
8th generation. Yeah, so this is a family whose generations have always been in the ministry. So now give us an event. This happened in July 15th, 2009, is that correct? And you were with your friend and you were working on the cars?
Yes,
No.
sir.
I'll get
This
out
is
of this.
this all okay. So this all happened on July 5th, 2009. Yes, and then I lived in New York at the time, upstate New York, not New York City. I was with my best friend Adam. We were helping his stepdad take down somebody's pool, and he forgot a tool back at the house. So me and Adam said we'd go back and get it. And we went back and got it, and on our way back, this is when the accident happened and transpired.
Tell us about the accident.
All right. So I don't really have remembered the accident or any recollection of the accident. This is all stuff I've been told, because it was light for me. But so it's I was at we went back, got the tool, and we're on our way back to the pool site to help take down the pool. And we're at a stop sign. We have to take a left-hand turn. 2 lanes are going one way, 2 lanes are going the other way. And is that 2-lane or 4-lane? 4-lane highway. And so we're taking a left-hand turn. As we're taking this turn, we're hit on the driver's side. The driver's side, kind of like right where the wheel is and the door is. You know where those two meet,
Yeah.
right where we were hit right there.
How fast was he going?
The SUV. So he was in an SUV. We were in a small, thin Intrepid, Chrysler Intrepid. It's a thinner car, but the speed limit zone was at 35, and he was going over 85 miles an hour. 85 plus is what the cop said. And then so where the accident happened, I don't know, 20 maybe 30 yards to the right, there's a traffic light. So he's doing over 85 miles an hour coming up to a traffic light 30 yards away, and you know the verse, oh yeah, okay. So he so he hit us. He was going over 85 miles an hour. He hit us. He hit us so hard, we got pushed into oncoming traffic, so we were hit again. The people who hit us the second time, their car was totaled and destroyed, and you'll see it in the pictures. But they were doing the speed limit, so they were able to walk away with minor cuts and bruises and just, that type thing. And but the kid that hit us, he went airborne, landed in somebody's backyard, and he broke both of his legs and was out of the hospital after 2 weeks. And so you know the scripture verse where it says, God turns everything for the good of those who love the Lord, or
Romans 8:28. All things work together for the good.
Yeah. So, okay. Or no. That which the devil meant for evil, God turned to me.
Yes.
About Genesis.
Yeah.
Joseph.
Yeah. Sorry, got him. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Between the two of us, we'll get it.
So the devil wanted to take lives and destroy lives that day. But so right where the accident happened, there was a fireman's house, fire station, right there. And so after I got released from the hospital and everything, I had to eventually go back there and talk to him. And this is what they told me. They're like, we heard what sounded like a loud okay. So some of the guys who actually worked on the car I was in and worked on that scene, they were actually there. So I actually got to talk to them and stuff. And they were like, we heard what sounded like a loud explosion go off, And because of their training and everything, they were so quick in responding. They said that when they got to the scene of the accident, the
Things were
the car, yeah, cars were still moving, or pieces of car were still moving around. And things were still moving, and 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 so they got to the car, and so Adam, my best friend Adam, he was driving the car, and I was in the passenger seat, and so when they got to the scene of the accident, they said Adam, he was moaning, like making noises, like moaning like that and stuff. And but so I was no longer in the front seat. I was in the back seat. And I was lifeless. I wasn't moving. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't like nothing. Like they thought I was dead. And so, but it's like, okay, so they assume I wasn't wearing my seatbelt, which, I mean, let's be honest. The kid that hit us was 20. Adam was 20. I was 20. We're going from Adam's house with the tool we got the tool, and then we're going to the pool that we're taking down. It was only like a few miles. So like 20 years old, was I wearing my seatbelt? I don't know if I was or not, but I mean, I probably wasn't. Let's be honest. I wasn't driving the car, so it's not like I had to. But I mean, I was in the front seat, so I technically did have to. But I don't know. So like, yeah. Okay, so like another testimony to how God works everything out for good. So I was in the front seat, but like I was now in the back seat. So to get me out of the car, all they had to do was cut off the roof of the car. So they cut off the roof of the car, and they got me out, and they were able to take me to the one of the main hospitals in that county, in that region, whatever. And they got me out and took me. But it took another like 10
almost half an hour.
almost half hour, like 25 to half an hour minutes to get Adam out of the car, because that was where the brunt of the impact was, in the front. And yeah, his legs were pinned. And so like it's kind of good that I was in the back, because it was easier to get me out. And they said that that because that extra time that they were able to get me out, and quicker to strong, that extra time that they didn't have to spend fighting to get me out and stuff, probably saved my life and stuff.
Both boys had to be intubated, revived, and intubated at the scene.
And so they contacted you, right? When did you find out about it?
Us?
Yeah.
We were out for a motorcycle ride and had gone with one of the other pastors and his wife, and my brother and his wife. We all met up.
It was a Sunday afternoon.
It was a Sunday afternoon, so after church, we'd gone out for a nice leisurely motorcycle ride. And of course, when you're on a motorcycle, you don't hear your phones.
Right.
So we just stopped up by the lake, because Rochester's right on Lake Ontario. And so we stopped, we got some ice cream, and we were going to walk a pier out, just relaxing in the beauty. And that's when finally they actually got a hold of our assistant pastor, because they'd been trying us and couldn't reach us, and it was our daughter, Renee. And so Mark said, "It's Renee," and gave us the phone. And she says that this other family was trying to reach us, and that Bradley had been in a very serious accident down, and gave us the address at Whitten and Pinnacle. It was at that intersection. And so I said, okay, I'll call them. And so I called them. They were just leaving their house, and they were en route. And so we hopped on our motorcycles, and thank God there were no police. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because those motorcycles, I had trouble keeping up with her on,
High RPM.
oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever seen her ride so fast. But you know, when you got a helmet on, I don't know, the angels heard us because you could pray really loud in your helmet and nobody's flying down the road.
Which is something you probably
Oh, we
did
started
immediately.
immediately.
It was probably about a 25-minute drive
Because
from
we
where
were on
we
the
were
north side of the city,
to
the accident
where
happened
we
on
were
the south.
going.
Yeah.
And not knowing it because we're on separate bikes, we both were praying the same thing. God, you have to spare his life. Because we knew where Bradley's relationship with the Lord was. We knew, that Bradley, deep down, there was a love for God. He was just struggling to try and figure it out. But we're like, God, you have to spare his life. Yeah. So we get to the accident, and of course, they've got it all blocked off, and the accident was a little bit further from where they blocked it. So Chuck was talking to the officer, and the gift of talking that Chuck has as a preacher really came in handy because I was able to just gun my bike and get to the accident of the scene. And when I got there, they asked who I was, and I told them that my son was in one of those cars. They asked for his name. I told them his name, and they said, "Oh, well, he's okay. He was talking." So
Which was a lie, but.
Yeah.
don't know why we were told that, but, and I was telling Kathy this morning, looking at those pictures again, I did not see the worst of the accident. I saw the Honda that was the second car that hit them, that doesn't look quite so bad. So, as a believer, we are protected so many times by God. The Holy Spirit will put a shield around us and only allow us to see what God knows
Yeah.
that we can handle, so to speak.
And Carrie, you found out also? How did you find out?
Right. So
I know this is emotional, I can tell. It's
Wow.
just
yeah,
coming back.
Mom and
Yeah.
I were just saying like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
where is this going? Like
Yeah.
I haven't teared up like this in a long time.
Now, how old were you, Carrie, that you were?
So I had just moved, just graduated from college and moved to New York City, and I was starting. I was helping a church, plant in Manhattan, right? So we're just there. We're getting started with services planning. I remember that Sunday. I usually, after service, I usually would go back to my little apartment and just chill. I mean, because, you're like running a million miles an hour. So I'd just be by myself, just relaxing. And that day, I happened to be talking with one of my friends, little girlfriends, and we were like, hey, why don't you just come over? We'll just study together, read or whatever. And I'm like never with people after Sunday. And so it was a very interesting afterthought to look back, because I was sitting there, my friend was on another couch, and we're just studying, reading, and that's when I got the phone call from Renee first. I got the phone call from Renee, and she's starting to talk, and then she's like crying, and she's saying Brad was in an accident, and so then I'm starting to ask questions, because at first, you're not immediately thinking like really bad. You're like, oh, okay, what kind? And then she starts crying, and she doesn't know, and she's trying to figure out details, and they're like, but I think you need to be here. I don't know, Dad, did you call me after, or?
No,
Your cousin called
your
you.
Ange
cousin.
called. Yeah, okay. So I got off the phone with Renee. My cousin Andrea called me, and she said that she was going to book me a flight, and for me to get to Rochester like right away, I needed to be there right then. So I was just like, okay, we do that. And it was great to have my friend there at the time, because she was able to call her sister. They were able to drive me to the airport. It was just like set up for me to get to the airport very quickly. I didn't have to worry about hopping in my car. Where do I leave my car? Just details that it was great to not have to think about that. And God set that up, even those little details. It was amazing. So that's when I found out that Sunday afternoon from Renee. And so I was on a plane by like that later evening.
She was up there before
Yeah.
midnight.
So, and they took Bradley to Rochester?
To
General
Strong.
Strong. And was he in the trauma? They took him to
So
the
they took him right to the ED, and
So you all went to the hospital?
so we made it to the hospital. They would not allow us into the emergency room for quite a while.
2 hours.
And I finally said to Chuck, I said, wait a minute, you're a pastor, you walk into these places, you can go anywhere in the hospital.
Usually.
What's up?
So
So
I-
Chuck said to them,
Go ahead.
Well, I went out because, you know, they have a
Bradley,
security.
you're unconscious right now, so we'll get back to you.
So they've got him back in the ED department, and they've put us in this little room finally. And I went out to there, because supposedly a doctor was supposed to come out and see us. And they didn't want us to see our kids, either of the families, Adam's parents, you know, they all showed up and we showed up. We had people from the churches, and they both had gone to a Christian school together, so we had coaches and teachers and other students. The hospital got inundated. So anyway, people arrived from our church, and we still hadn't seen Bradley. So I went out to the security guard, and I said, look, I'm a pastor. Usually I get in, and I can get to see patients in there, and it's no problem. Our son, we've been here 2 hours. I said, you either get a doctor out here to talk to us now so we can get in there and see our son, or I said, you want a scene? I can cause a scene in this place. We got plenty of friends, plenty of people here, and you will have trouble on your hands. I said, so you get a doctor out here now. They've been holding us off. We want to see our son. I was, yeah, you're emotional and...
Terminator mode.
Yeah, it just kicks in.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I talk about it, I can feel it. Yeah.
Now, what were the thoughts going through your head once you did see him in the hospital as far
Well, first it was
at
the
first,
doctor.
First the diagnosis came from the doctor. You want to explain that?
well, then we were sitting in a room. They took us all into a room,
Yeah.
obviously, for obvious reasons. And the
And
doctor begins,
everybody was there. Was Tony there too?
I don't know if he was there at that point. I don't think so.
Yeah, but Renee and Kara were
I
there.
wasn't there.
You
Kara
were.
She
wasn't
wasn't
there.
there till then.
So we were there, Chuck's
Okay.
parents were there, some other family members.
Our associate pastor came in with us.
And he was there.
And he was trained as an EMT. So he understood some of the things the
Right.
doctor was saying at a different level than we did.
Right.
So the doctor begins to explain that, you know, your son was in a bad car accident, he was unresponsive at the scene. Somewhere at some point, again, another testimony of how God protects you. At some point, they had told us that both boys were brought in brain dead, but we never heard any of that. The whole 1 month that we were at that hospital, never heard that at all. And I believe that's because God protected us from that.
So they were actually brought in brain dead.
Unresponsive and then brain dead. So they began to explain the injury and said that he had suffered diffuse axonal injury. And of course, we don't know what that really means.
What's that?
But then the doctor said it's shearing of the brain. And I can remember sitting in that room and thinking, I don't know what shearing of the brain means, but that sounds really bad. And then I looked over at our associate pastor, and I could tell by the look on his face, being an EMT, this is pretty serious. And then they begin to say things like, the Bradley that you've known, this was at the onset, the Brad you've known, you will never have again, you will never be the same again. And they just kept repeating that over and over again.
Well, they got that part right, but not the way they thought.
Well, we took it and turned it into a faith declaration.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
Yeah, and that's an important point, Chuck. I think you really need to emphasize that because you really took a hold of that one and began to,
What we would do is, as the doctors and nurses shared things with us, we learned a lot about medicine over the next few months. And so we would go online and research things, and even though they told us not to, because I'm a detail person and I wanted to know what was going on. If they said this, I want to know what they said. So we looked up his diagnosis, and nobody recovers. 90% of the people who suffer diffuse axonal injury are still in a vegetative state, which is what they told us after a couple of weeks. They said, your son's going to be a vegetable. So,
What kind
The
of
other-
vegetable, Bradley? No, I'm sorry.
the other 10%
Mr.
are
Carey.
very low-functioning individuals who can do nothing for themselves. They're not just vegetables laying in a bed. They may be able to get up and maybe...
I should go on VeggieTales.
VeggieTales, there you go. You should go on VeggieTales.
So anyway, we took those things. So like when they said, you'll never get your son back, even if he survives this, if he ever does come out of the coma, or even if he just lives, He's not going to be the same. So I began to take that and turn that. I said, okay, God, they keep declaring this over him. And we thought, we got to turn that, every declaration, because we guarded what was said in his room when they moved him upstairs to intensive care. We didn't let people go in who were overly distraught. If they were, we tried to control that and get them out. We wanted faith declarations made. We brought in music. We brought in worship music. We brought in lists of scriptures for people to read if they were in there with him, to read about healing and things of that nature. We actually had worship leaders from our church who brought extra guitars in, so we had instruments there so people could play and sing, which even one of his nurses, because a few of them were Christians, one actually started playing and actually played some Dave Matthews music because he liked it. He's in a coma.
So you went to war.
We went to war, and we turned that declaration. I said, God, if he's going to be changed, I said, when he comes out of this, because one of the things is God spoke to us. This is kind of key, too. God spoke to both Cindy and I independently and said, Brad has unfulfilled destiny. And so I'm not going to leave him like this. So we hung on to that. So we changed that. And I said, God, we knew he wasn't living for the Lord before the accident. We didn't know everything he was into. But we knew his heart was trying to find its way, And so we said, God, when he comes out of this, we want him more on fire for you than he ever has been. And so that's how you can change him.
And unfortunately, Adam did not make it. He died.
Right.
Did he die that day or the next day?
Well,
that evening.
That evening,
in the
he
morning.
passed away.
Yeah.
Well, actually, yeah. And one of the things is, the doctors they figured they were gone already. And,
Yeah.
they encourage you to just go ahead and let them go.
I remember, I think it was Monday or something, I think I got a call from you. And I went and I started praying in the Spirit, and I saw him sitting on the edge of the bed. There wasn't any picture of him sitting there singing the Star Spangled Banner or anything, but I saw him sitting on the edge of the bed, and I just went to the Lord and I just said, Lord, just do whatever you're going to do. It's the only thing I could do at that point, because sometimes stuff like that looks overwhelming to you, but they kept their faith. And how long was...
Well, if I could just interject.
Yeah, you can do anything you want here.
Just, Adam being Brad's best friend and, getting to know Adam's family a little bit more through all of this, I just want to say, we don't always understand why things happen. Why was one boy spared and another boy wasn't spared? We don't know why. But I can sit here and say, I think one of the truest miracles sometimes is when somebody goes through the loss of a child or something tragic that is so, unexplainable to us, and God walks through that with you. I think that is just as much a miraculous happening as seeing, God miraculously turn around something like this as well. So,
And how long was Bradley in a coma? Was it an induced coma they put him in, or just a coma? He was just
No,
out.
they were trying to wake him up.
Okay. And how long was he like that?
2.5 months.
Okay.
Yeah, God spoke to us. I remember after a month we came into the hospital one day and I just started crying. It was one of the nights where I didn't stay at the hospital and we'd gone home and somebody else stayed with him. And walking in, I just started crying, And I remember saying to the Lord, you told us he's not going to be left like this. I said, I still believe that, but I said I didn't anticipate we'd still be here at the end of July,
yeah, we really expected God to do something, but we expected it like this. Okay, this is the week God's going to do it. The next week would go by and we're like, okay, this is the week. Brad's going to sit up on the edge of the bed. This is the week. And week after week would go by. So we hit the 4th week mark. And, and all along, there were different things that would happen that showed us God was still in control of it. And it started with the fact that Bradley was still alive. So they didn't expect him to make it in the beginning. So that was a sign to us. Okay, God, you spared his life. You spared it for a reason. You're not going to leave him. And we just would take every small thing that happened, and we would take it and grab a hold of it, and we would run with
That's
that
great.
at
That's
that
great.
point. Yeah.
Kara, how were you feeling while this was all going? What was going through your head?
Yeah, so, well, even going back to the flight, I remember yesterday I was trying to just kind of sit and just recall different things. And I remembered being in the plane and feeling very, like, I don't, either split personality or schizo or something, because I would be on the plane, and it, you know, when something like that happens, my mind's starting to take over, and you don't care who's around you. And so I'm like crying. I didn't want to cause a scene, and I didn't want to talk to anybody, so I'm like crying in my seat, and I'm like, oh, my brother, oh, don't take my brother. And then it would like switch, and I'd be like roaring at the enemy, and I'd be like, you're not going to take him. And then I'd be like, oh, my brother. And then I'd be like, oh, like, no, I hate you, you know, like, oh, it was like this back and forth. I was so back and forth, and then right in like the middle, towards the end of the flight, it was like the peace of God came, and I was just so at peace and rest, and I just knew it was just okay. I didn't know what, I couldn't explain it, but there was peace. I didn't cry. I wasn't yelling anymore, and it was just a very peaceful flight, and I was able to get off, walk into the hospital. Flooded. There were just people everywhere. A little weird when you're walking in the hospital and everyone's like, oh, his sister, you know. I could just feel eyes, you know, and I just remember trying to find them and figure out what was going
So
on.
would you all say, you're not here yet, so we'll get back to you. Would you all say that the grace was there when you needed it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I can remember walking from down at the ED up to the third floor of the trauma unit when they had taken Brad up, and walking down the hall and saying to Chuck, well, we either believe this to be true or we don't. Meaning, we believe God can turn this around or we don't. Everything that we've sang about, we've talked about, we've prayed about, we've preached about, we either believe it to be true or we don't. And I think that really was like a turning, that was a solidifying, not turning, but a solidifying moment for us. This is the stance we're going to take. We believe the Word of God to be true.
We didn't waffle from that position of faith. There were times you felt emotional, but even in the midst of that, we never moved from the position we believed God was going to restore Brad. But God would give us, when it was very interesting to see that every time we'd get emotional and feel the weight of that hitting us,
Yes.
God had something lined up. The first minister outside of our family who came and prayed with us, representing our denomination, because I was a leader in the denomination, so they sent somebody because they couldn't get there right away. And he came in, and as he prayed with the whole family in a room privately, in his prayer, guess what he said? Brad has unfulfilled destiny.
Same thing the Lord said.
So I walked into the elevator and said, you just used the phrase God gave to both my wife and to me. So we would grab a hold of that. There would be little things from Cindy asking for cups. I don't know if you want to tell that story.
Oh, yeah,
Or-
this was early on. I would stop at McDonald's, grab a cup of coffee, and head to the hospital when I wasn't there. And I was sitting in the waiting room one morning, and my coffee had gotten cold. And I'm looking at the microwave that's in the room, and I just have a thought. I'm not praying, I have a thought, man, I wish I had a mug that I could put in the microwave instead of this styrofoam cup that's full of all kinds of toxins. So that night, Monday night, a couple from our church came, and they had a bag, and they said, here, we want to give this to you. They said, it's for you. So I wish I had it. I have it, but it's packed somewhere because we just moved. To show you, I pull out the one item out of it, and it was a mug that said Chuck on it. I pull out the second mug, and it says Cynthia on it. And the Lord spoke to me at that moment and said, when you want to get your kids' attention, what do you use? You use their full name. So it was like God was saying, oh yeah, I've got this. Watch and see. Cynthia uses my full name. Best part about the story is they were shopping in Pennsylvania and went into an Amish store, and in the basement in the back corner on the table were sitting these two mugs, Chuck and Cynthia. And this couple's having
Right
this
next to
conversation going, is her name Cynthia? Yes, her name is Cynthia. No, I'm not sure. Is her full name Cynthia? They're like, oh, well, let's just get them anyway. So they pick up these 2 mugs that are on a table in the corner of this room. Chuck and Cynthia bring it to us. And the best part about this is that they purchased these on Saturday. The Saturday before the Monday that I have this thought, I wish I had a mug. Don't ever question that God doesn't have your back. Don't ever question that He's left you or that He's not there. He is working all the time behind the scenes. Sometimes it might not materialize like this did, but He's always doing it. And this was just such a huge sign that I'm in control of this. I've got this. I've got your back.
So wake up time.
Hey.
So
Oh, that was much later. We had to fight. We had to fight through things before we ever got to there. At 2 weeks, they finally said at 2 weeks he was going to survive. They said his body has stabilized. The only reason they said his brain stem is intact. They said the rest of his brain's gone. So I made him show me the scans. I said, show me why you're diagnosing this. And we have copies. They give you copies of all the records. So we have these. And we had an unsaved scientist, brain research scientist, who wanted to see these because his nephew was a friend of Brad's. He came and looked at him and said, my goodness. Now they had told us Brad's brain was, they said, in non-technical terms, his brain is mush.
liquid.
Well,
He likes the word liquid. So we got to bring that in.
Well, the brain research scientists came to our house after Brad had been released from the hospital because he couldn't believe. He says, people with that diagnosis do not get up and walk around. They don't do that. He said, something's not right. So he came in, he said, can I see them? So we put him in our DVD player one day when he came over to our house. And he went through because it slowly goes down through the whole brain. And he's looking, describing the different parts, and goes, that's totally destroyed. This is totally destroyed. And he gets down into the center of the brain. He goes, it's liquefied. So that's where. So Brad likes to tell people if you drilled the hole.
No, he did that to me. So, no, I'm up. I just finished the service up at their church, and now he's up and gone. So we'll get back to his waking up. And I'm trying to drive out the driveway, and it's dark, and there's Bradley, and he's doing this. He's blocking the car. So I walk over, and I roll down the window, and he walks up to me like this, and he goes, if I turn my head sideways and take a drill and drill it in here, you think liquid would come out? And I'm thinking that, I said, if you're going to do that, liquid's still in there. So, but so let's move to where I know he's chomping. So you how long was he in a coma? What was the day you woke up?
I was in a coma for 2.5 months. I don't remember what specific day it was, like a Monday, Tuesday.
Now you didn't go to heaven.
It was September 21st.
You didn't go to heaven and see God, and you didn't go to hell and meet the devil. You were out.
Yeah, I have no recollection of any out of body experience or anything.
Right.
The only thing that did happen that I don't have any recollection of this. This is just in my mind what I believe was happening. Sure. Okay. So there was a point when I was in a coma that I would have these hot, because my hypothalamus is, I guess, it regulates your body temperature and everything. It was fully destroyed. So I would have really high temperatures and like skyrocketing temperatures and stuff. So much so that they would turn on the AC in my room. They stripped me down and they put a blanket on me, but it was like a blanket that was filled with ice water and stuff. Like my sisters called it my mermaid blanket.
Yeah, you look like a little merman.
Yeah, mermaid. Yeah. But I, like, in my mind, I relate the temperatures and everything. I relate that all to like happening not because my hypothalamus was destroyed, but spiritually speaking, I have no recollection of it. This is just how I interpret it. Like, I think like God took me to hell, let me go to hell, because like that's where I would have went if I would have died. Like, because I actually believe it, because God was not in my heart. He was not center of my life. I wasn't serving him. I wasn't living for him. Like, I wanted nothing to do with him. If God was going this way, I was running that way. Like, you
were the opposite.
Yeah, I wasn't about that life.
Yeah.
So that, I believe, yeah, that was that.
So you came out of the coma. What was the thoughts going through your head when you came out of the coma?
So I wake up and I'm like, okay. So sharing this story at different places, I found out this is true for all men, but this is actually true for all women too.
Yeah.
It's universal. I didn't know it was universal. I thought it was just guys, like a guy thing. But okay, so I wake up and I'm like, whoa, where am I? I've never seen this place before. Like, whoa, what's happening? And then it hits me. I'm like, oh, I gotta drain the radiator. I gotta go to the bathroom. Yeah. Where's the bathroom at? And
I gotta drain the radiator.
and so
Holy mackerel.
on the side of the bed in the hospitals, there's railings to keep the patient from rolling out of bed. Only I didn't know there was a button to call the nurses in. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know there was a button to call the nurses in. I didn't know there was a button to release the whatever, to lower them. I didn't know anything. So I just reverted to what I knew and my old way of doing things. So I was like, I'll hop it like I hop a fence. Except I didn't know I'd been lying in this bed for 2.5 months. And so I have no muscle mass. I'm just a walking stick of Jello. And so I roll over the side of this railing thing. I roll over. As soon as my feet hit the ground, the rest of my body hits the ground. It was like a slinky. When you drop a slinky, it's like it's so. Yeah. And as soon as my body weight left the bed, man, I'm telling you, like, a loud alarm went off. It was like somebody was robbing a bank. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, what is up? Like, what? Oh my. I surrendered. If like they say everything's more amplified because of what's happened in your mind and everything. So I thought it was like 15 nurses came running in the room, like all yelling at me, like, "Oh my gosh, are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right? Did you hit your head?" But it was really only like 4 or 5 nurses, so they asked, and I had a little scrape on my shoulder due to there was like a thingy like in the middle of the bed, like, or not in the middle of the bed, but in between. So in my room there were 2 beds. There was like a little
My bed?
Stand.
Your bed.
stand. So so somebody was always somebody was always not somebody was always in the room with me. Like in the room I was in, there was 2 beds. Like the Lord blessed it or something. Like it was crazy. Like so somebody always stayed with me. On this day, it was supposed to be, or it was my father, except he thought I was still sleeping, and my room was right next to the nurses' station, so there's a window and the nurses could look in and stuff. And so he told the nurses, hey, I'm gonna go take a shower. Just keep an eye on my son. He's still sleeping, I believe, and so just keep an eye on him. So he went and took a shower. The nurses, I'm in a coma. They know what they know. I'm not waking up, so they're like, what? I don't know, whatever. And so they get distracted or get focused on doing work or caring for other patients or whatever. And so I'm, what's the word? Unwatched. I'm
Unattended.
Yeah, thank you. I'm unattended. Yo, we should make a movie, Unattended. And so, oh man, okay, so I was unattended, and so this happened, and then they take me to the bathroom. I go to the bathroom, then I come out, sit on the bed. I'm like, then they actually went and got
No,
you.
I came back from
Or
the shower.
They didn't get you?
No, I came back from my shower.
I thought
and
they did.
the nurses were there,
Oh.
and they're all going, "He's okay, he's okay." And I'm going, "What are you talking about? He didn't hit his head." "What do you mean he didn't hit his head?" He said, "He fell out of the bed." I said, "Who? What?" And
So he was up.
that's when he began to recall and remember things. He doesn't know anything about that whole 2.5-month period from the accident up. He doesn't know anything. Even though we were taking him to therapy and they were moving him, we did all his range of motion exercises and so on before that. But when we moved him into a brain rehab program after a month, then he was actually, they started doing more things. He had physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, recreational therapy. You had it all, the doctors and the nurses. And so we were taking him and his body was doing things, but he has no recollection of what we were making.
And we probably should back up just to say that that was a miracle that Brad ended up at the St. Mary's Brain Rehabilitation Center, which there's only the one in upstate New York, because they really gave us 7 pages of nursing home facilities and said you need to pick one. There's nothing more that
'Cause
we
he's
can
gonna
do.
be a vegetable.
He's
Right.
going to be a vegetable.
Yeah.
So
They wanted his bed. They said, we need a place. You tell us where to move his body.
So the night before St. Mary's, the head of St. Mary's came and interviewed him. We prayed, God, if you've got to send a whole fleet of angels, he has got to respond with some kind of movement to a command that they give him. And he did it miraculously. He did it. There's a whole lot more to that story and the details.
Yeah,
and,
we be all 5.
yeah, but
So when did you feel the transformation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Immediately.
Tell me what was going on. Now, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you witness or something to
He woke up born again, on fire for God.
say it again?
I said he woke up born again, on fire for God. God answered our prayers that he would be changed.
And he was transformed
He
while
was-
he was in the coma.
While he was in the coma, he came out. We had gotten him a brand new Bible when he graduated from high school. This was, 2 years after. It was still brand new in the box. But when he came to, he asked, he couldn't talk yet, but he communicated and let us know he wanted his Bible. So we brought his Bible, and he began to read it so much that pages came loose. The brand new Bible.
well, the Bible went from being this thin when it's new to being this thick because he's in it every day. He's eating and chewing the word. And
What are you feeling inside of you as this is going on? Was it like an inner explosion, like all your DNA exploded towards the kingdom and God? And
I don't know.
it just was natural.
To me, it wasn't like a feeling. It was just you woke up and this is who you were. This is how I'm walking now. This is how I'm living now. Like it wasn't. It's kind of like It's kind of like it's kind of like I want to say it's kind of like I didn't have a choice. But I mean, we all have a choice, yes. But I kind of just did it. Like I just woke up and this is like I've been living this life for years. It was just normal. I just woke up and did these things.
So before he could even speak, Bradley started doing sign language because he knew sign language before the accident. And so he would sign to us that he wanted to pray, or he would go over to someone walking himself in his wheelchair with his feet. He'd walk over and he would lay hands on somebody and he would begin to pray, not with a voice, but he was praying for them. Or he would say to us, he'd spell out the Bible, and he would open it up to a part in the Bible and he would tell us to read it to this person, read it to these nurses. And this all happened as he's emerging out of this coma. So,
Yeah, and this whole every time they say emerging out of this coma or I was doing things or with a weird stare or I wasn't really there. Like there's different stages to a coma. Like for the first month of my coma, I was in that deep state. Where you're just looking at laying in the bed looking like you're dead. That was me for the first month. the next month and a half, I was doing things. I was going through the motions. I was doing therapy. I was moving in a wheelchair, praying, reading, having my Bible read and stuff. But like me personally, I wasn't awake yet. Until that day I fell out of bed.
You know, one thing I noticed after I've met Bradley, and every time I've seen him, is the expression has never changed. There's that grin, and it's been there ever since. It's like, and you feel a call to really go out and evangelize
Yes, sir.
and tell your story and tell about the greatness of God.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And you know, to me, this is you know, we're about to wrap this up because we could be here all day. My prayer, as I was sitting here, my prayer for this family is that they would write a book on this.
Yeah.
Can somebody say amen to that? And my hope and my prayer is that this story would be put in book form and that God would use that to send him out, to share about the greatness of God, to share about really not having, there's a part of that that's true about sometimes God does something and he doesn't give us a choice. He chooses for us. And I believe he did that for you. Not only because of you, but because of the faithfulness of 7 generations of pastors that this represented. So there's so much more to this story. I hope we can get it out in life, but God has like they said, what was meant for evil was turned into good, and he was created before the foundation of the earth to fulfill this destiny. There was a destiny for him. And to me, this is one of the most miraculous stories I ever heard. So feel free. We're going to take a break for about 10 minutes or 15. So we're going to come back here about 10 of, and if you're going to would you make yourselves available? Do you have anything else you would like to say? Yeah.
God, his faith is phenomenal. And God uses him now. For one, it's been prophesied God would use him in the healing ministry, but he goes and speaks at churches, youth groups, but he works as a host at Olive Garden. That's cool. And they actually came to him eventually because people started going to the Olive Garden because they knew Brad worked there. He got the job while he was still in outpatient therapy. You know, usually they help brain injury survivors get a job, but he ended up getting one without their help. And but he started working there, so people would go. Well, people would come, and he'd pray for them in the lobby because that's where he worked. Open the doors, welcoming them in, taking them to their seats. So people come in, and he meets them, and if something was wrong, all of a sudden I get a text one night, Dad, what's a Presbyterian? And it turns out 2 Presbyterian ladies had come in, and they'd already told, one of the managers wasn't a Christian, and they'd come to him and said, Bradley, no more of this. And he says, you mean laying on of hands? And they say, whatever, yeah, no more of this. So he asked this woman, he saw her come in, and she was like this, not moving, so he said, come to my church tomorrow. And she said, I can't, I'm leaving, I'm here visiting my friends, I'm leaving to go home tomorrow morning. So he says, well, okay, and he asked permission to lay hands on her, and he laid hands on her neck. But it was so crowded, nobody could really see him, so he went ahead, prayed for her. Well, she starts screaming and shouting because her neck suddenly was freed up and the pain was gone, and she started yelling and dancing around. And so he told us that that's the kind of stuff God does for him now. He's seen people walk. Even before he got out of the hospital, he prayed for a guy who had been attacked, and he lost his eyesight. He prayed for him. He started to get his eyesight back.
And now you're at Olive Garden at Walnut. Where are you?
Cary?
Walnut Street, the Olive Garden there.
Yeah.
And you've already prayed for a few people. at Olive
Even
Garden.
staff, he prays
Yeah.
for.
Right, so if you're sick and you need spaghetti, you know where to go. Unlimited salad bar and an anointed prayer is on the menu.
One of the things is actually you spoke over my life once, and you were like, "There's God's done something in you, and there's been a name change." Like, I'll never forget that. You spoke and you were like, "There's been a name change." You know, from like you said from Abram to Abraham, like you were Brad and now you're Bradley, or I mean you didn't say that, but that's
That's all right, you can do whatever, you
Yeah.
can work it.
yeah. So I was just like, wow, and so I was like, you know, when I was like Jesus' first miracle, like I was water and now I'm wine.
Oh, I love
I
that.
was water and now I'm wine.
Wow, that's great.
Like,
Let's just give them all a hand.